My name is Sarah Miller, and I had heard rumors of an old abandoned mansion, supposedly haunted. My curiosity got the better of me. It was a cloudy afternoon when I ventured alone to the secluded property. The mansion, with its towering spires and dark windows, seemed to emerge from the shadows of the surrounding forest. As I drew closer, I felt a weight upon my shoulders, a sense of primordial warning. Yet my desire to explore the unknown was greater than my fears. I entered the grounds and began to wander around, admiring the Gothic and eerie architecture. As I strolled through the neglected gardens, I felt the eyes of the empty windows watching me. The mansion seemed to breathe an aura of sadness and mystery. I located a slightly ajar side door, and propelled by my curiosity, I stepped inside. The entrance hall was shrouded in darkness, with only a few rays of light filtering through the old windows. I started to explore the rooms, discovering furniture covered in sheets and faded portraits on the walls. The mansion appeared to be a time capsule, preserving the secrets of its former inhabitants. Then, I heard a strange sound, like footsteps echoing through the corridors. My heart raced, and I wondered if someone else was inside. Continuing my exploration, I stumbled upon a dusty library. Old books, their pages yellowed, lined the shelves. It was then that I saw something that made my blood run cold. Several dolls with severed heads and mutilated bodies, surrounded by strange symbols. I realized there was something sinister and supernatural going on in the mansion. An intense fear gripped my body when I heard a whisper in my ear. Yet no one was there. I felt an invisible presence watching me, and a sense of alertness settled over me. I knew I should flee, but something kept me rooted in place, curious and terrified at the same time. As night fell, the mansion seemed to come alive. I heard odd sounds, like scratchings on the walls and distant whispers and children's laughter. The shadows seemed to dance around me, and I felt increasingly trapped in a living nightmare. My flight instinct screamed for me to leave, but a paralyzing fear kept me from moving. That was when I saw something moving in the shadows. Dark figures, distorted human forms, seemed to be watching me from afar. I screamed, my voice echoing through the empty corridors. I ran, my feet stumbling in my panic, but the figures seemed to follow me, their ghostly footsteps echoing behind me. With my heart pounding, I ran through the mansion, searching for an exit. The doors seemed locked, the windows sealed. I felt trapped in a sinister trap. My panic turned to desperation as the shadowy figures drew closer, their disfigured faces and empty eyes fixed on me. Finally, I found an unlocked door and escaped into the mansion's grounds. I ran through the forest, tripping over roots and leaves, while the dark shapes seemed to pursue me through the darkness. I didn't stop running until I reached the road where I finally felt safe. In the days that followed, I tried to rationalize what had happened in the mansion, but the images of the shadowy figures and strange symbols remained in my mind. I spoke to others about my experience, but they looked at me as if I were crazy. The mansion remained empty, its reputation as a haunted place growing. I heard rumors that others had experienced similar phenomena, but no one could explain what truly went on inside. The property became known as the Mansion of Dread, a place people avoided. Fearing the unknown and the supernatural, the Mansion of Dread, with its shadows and secrets, would serve as a lasting reminder that there are things in this world we cannot explain, forces that defy our rational understanding. My name is Alice Taylor, and I'm going to tell you about a disturbing weekend I experienced. So, when my friend Matt suggested we spend a weekend at a remote cabin in the woods, I was intrigued. The idea of exploring a supposedly haunted place immediately appealed to me. We arrived at the cabin on Friday afternoon, the sun hiding behind the trees. The cabin, hidden deep in the forest, seemed to emerge straight out of a horror story. We felt a strange vibe as we entered, the eerie atmosphere already engulfing us. As the sun set, the cabin seemed to come alive. Shadows danced on the walls, and the wind whispered through half-open windows, creating an even more terrifying atmosphere. Sitting by the fireplace, we listened to the sounds of the forest, our hearts racing with each crackle of the flames. We woke up the next morning, the cabin enveloped in a thick fog. The forest, which had looked inviting the night before, now seemed gloomy and menacing. We felt isolated and vulnerable, as if we were being surrounded by invisible forces. "There's something strange here," I murmured, my gaze wandering across the misty windows. Matt nodded, his face solemn. "I feel a sinister presence," he said, his voice low and tense. A sense that something was going to happen loomed large, and we began to question our decision to come here. As the day progressed, Matt started acting strangely. He wandered around the cabin, his eyes unfocused, as if he was seeing something we couldn't. He muttered nonsensical things, his behavior becoming increasingly odd. "Matt, are you okay?" I asked, concerned about his state. He gave me a vacant stare. His pupils dilated. "They're here," he whispered, his voice distant. "They're watching me." His words terrified me, and I began to wonder if we had stumbled upon something beyond our understanding, something supernatural. Night fell, and the cabin seemed even more frightening. The fire in the fireplace cast ghostly shadows on the walls. Matt suddenly jumped up, his eyes wide with terror. "They're coming!" he shouted, his body shaking. Running to the door, he started screaming hysterically into the forest, his eyes wide with fear. His behavior was wild and unpredictable, and I couldn't calm him down. Eventually, Matt collapsed on the floor, his body exhausted by the burst of energy. I stayed by his side, my heart pounding in my chest as I watched his fragile state. Slowly, he came back to himself, his eyes wandering confusedly around the room. "What happened?" he asked, his voice sounding confused. I told him about his strange behavior and his screams. He seemed shocked, with no memory of his own actions. A sense of relief hung over us, but a shadow of fear remained. The next morning, we decided to leave the cabin. Our weekend retreat turned into a place of terror. The forest, once a peaceful and relaxing place, had become dark and threatening. We hurried away, both eager to leave that place behind. Back in town, Matt seemed to be back to normal, but an uncertainty lingered. We talked about our experience, struggling to find rational explanations for the supernatural occurrences. The cabin became a haunted memory, a reminder of the power of the unknown and the forces that lurk in the shadows. The memories of what happened would continue to haunt our dreams, serving as a reminder that there are things in this world that defy our rational understanding. My name is Daniel Brown, and I was driving home after a long day's work. It was a Thursday night, and I had decided to take the Stewart Highway in Australia to shorten my journey. The highway, known for its isolated stretches and desolate landscapes, seemed even gloomier at night. Darkness enveloped my car like a cloak, my headlights cutting through the night and revealing only a small fraction of the road ahead. Seated behind the wheel, a sense of unease settled over me. The darkness seemed to hide secrets, and the loneliness of the highway kept me alert. The Stewart Highway, with its long stretches of empty road, felt like a place forgotten by the world, a perfect setting for a horror story. As I progressed along the highway, my fear grew in equal measure. The silence was oppressive, and the darkness seemed to swallow any sound. That's when I noticed something strange. The headlights of oncoming cars seemed different. I looked closer, and my heart nearly leaped out of my mouth. The cars were driverless, their headlights shining sinisterly into the empty cabins. I screamed, my voice echoing in the empty cabin. "What's going on here?" I started to speed up, wanting to leave the driverless cars behind, but they seemed to pursue me, maintaining a constant speed, their headlights shining like sinister eyes in the night. The feeling of paranoia deepened, and I began to wonder if there were any other travelers on the road besides me. I stopped at a remote gas station, the only pocket of light in the darkness of the night. I refueled my car, my eyes wandering into the darkness beyond the station's lights. I knew something was wrong, but I had no one to share my concerns with. The Stewart Highway, with its gloomy reputation, seemed to confirm my fears. Returning to the highway, the sense of paranoia intensified. The driverless cars kept appearing, their headlights shining eerily. Then I noticed something even more disturbing. The cars seemed to be communicating, their headlights flashing in strange patterns. "What do they want from me?" I asked aloud, my heart hammering in my chest. There was no answer, only the sinister gleam of headlights in the dark night of the highway. As I continued my journey, trying to leave the cars behind, they seemed to anticipate my moves. They would appear in my rearview mirror moments after I had passed them, their headlights shining like hungry eyes. The feeling of terror overwhelmed me, and I began to question my own sanity. And then, the unthinkable happened. One of the driverless cars collided with the rear of my car, its headlights shining directly into my eyes. My car spun out of control, finally coming to a stop in the ditch beside the road. I climbed out of the damaged car, disbelief washing over me. The feeling of being alone was agonizing, and the darkness of the highway seemed to engulf me bit by bit. I knew something supernatural was happening, but I was alone with no help in sight. I started walking down the road, my steps hesitant as I looked for any sign of help. The night seemed endless, the darkness like an open-air prison. Finally, after a long and exhausting walk, I spotted the lights of a hotel in the distance. I ran toward it, my heart racing with the hope of finding assistance. I recounted my terrifying experience to the receptionist, and he looked at me with a mix of skepticism and fear. I learned that I wasn't the only one to report such occurrences on the highway. Others had also experienced similar phenomena, their stories circulating on online forums and turning into urban legends. The highway, with its dark past, had become a terrifying place lurking in the shadows of the night. And so my story with the Stewart Highway came to an end. I never drove on it at night again, but the memories of the supernatural events remained vivid in my mind. The Highway of Terror, with its secrets and mysteries, would serve as a lasting reminder that there are things in this world that defy our understanding, forces that reside in the shadows and within our own minds.